Welcome everyone to the Human Rights Days here in Sweden and to the seminar called I Choose Peace, Youth Stories from the Horn of Africa to Sweden. And today we're going to hear stories from around the world from young people who in different ways strive to achieve more peaceful communities and a more peaceful world. But before I introduce our wonderful panelists for today, I am going to introduce myself. My name is Jasmine Jalloul, and I am appointed by LSU to represent the Swedish youth in the General Assembly in the United Nations. And as long as I've known, I've been active in the young civil society here in Sweden. And today's session is held by LSU, the National Youth Council for Youth Organizations, the Life and Peace Institute, and the Swedish Development Forum. And the theme for this year's Human Rights Days is Human Rights, a question on where you live. And there is no secret that there are different challenges and different opportunities depending on where a person lives. Opportunities in sense of rights and freedoms. And we have several international frameworks such as Agenda 2030 and Resolution 2250 for youth, peace, and security. And we want this event to serve a platform for young people to share their own stories and specifically on how they became change makers for more peaceful and including societies during this session. And we're also going to use a platform called Menti today for you to interact with us. We're going to ask you different questions, and in the end of the session, you will be able to see the answers. You will see more information about how to use the tool in the chat. Now, let me introduce our wonderful speakers for today's session. We're going to have 3 different panelists. We're going to have Teja Paschal, a 15-year-old activist that advocates for youth leadership in Georgia, USA. Rassian Ferey, a poet who has been working for self-empowerment and development within the youth suburbs of Stockholm, Sweden. And Karine Omtiono-Vase, a young Kenyan woman that works with radicalizing young people for peace. Their approaches and methods may be different, and even their locations, but they have one thing in common. They are young change makers contributing to build more peaceful societies for tomorrow and today's generations. And this also while inspiring others to do the same thing. And in the end of the session, we genuinely hope that you feel a little bit more inspired to do the same thing. So I want to welcome our panelists, and I will start with you, Teja. Good morning from USA, or good night. Good morning, I think it is.
Good morning. Yes, it's 9 a.m.
Good morning then. I'm so glad to have you here. We have spoken a little bit before, and you told me that you were only 13 when you started your first project, and you have worked within the young civil society for a long time. And my first question to you is, you have been engaged in your community for so long, but what made you get involved? Was there a specific moment that promoted you to take action?
I think it was first identifying injustices that really pushed me into the forefront of wanting to do something about it. So I had done a project just for a school project where I did a research study on socioeconomic locations' impact on education. And I realized that there were so many issues in place and so many things that needed to be changed. And I think that really pushed me into doing more research, connecting with more people, learning more about other injustices, and realizing how much growth we really have to come to as a society. And so I'm a person who doesn't want to sit still when I see something's wrong. And that really pushed me into developing the organizations I have today to really continue this change so that we can move society in a way that is helping everyone and growing together.
Wow. But I have to ask you, you're only 15. And do you feel like your age has been a particular challenge for you to be taken seriously when it comes to creating the change that you want to see within your community?
Definitely. I think no matter how old you are, though, there will always be doubters. And ageism is a very real thing that I feel a lot of young people really do face. I know when we went to our first foundation to pitch our organization idea and ask for funding, they responded with, "We love your mission. We love what you're doing. Come back in a few years. We feel that you're a little too young right now." And it's just taking that constructive criticism and showing, okay, what can I do to be better next time? And also having that support and that community of people who do believe in you, because there will always be people who doubt what you're doing and why you're doing it. But just sticking with it and never giving up is so important. I think everything I've done, I've probably gotten like 50 no's before I got a yes, but that just makes the yes that much more worth it.
But you have had a long commitment within the society, the youth society in Georgia, and you started your first project when you were 13 with Little Hands. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the process of you getting engaged within your community?
Definitely. So, Little Hands was the project I launched after identifying the educational injustices in my community. So, we started with just doing book drives. And so I asked all my friends, hey, if you've already read some books and have any left, could you donate them to our book drive? And then we collected over 550 books and we took them to a school in our county that didn't have a lot of resources. And a lot of students there were English language learners. So reading was a great way for them to get more immersed in the language and develop. And so we've been doing that since then, and we've really made an impact there. But what I realized is there are so many barriers to keep us as an organization from growing, and that's when I took the initiative to meet other young people trying to do service projects like I did. And I met my co-director and 8 other young people within my state who also wanted to create and develop change in their own areas of interest and passion. And so that's when we launched Georgia Youth Leaders, which was an organization that encompasses all of these young people who are ready to strive for change. And we are become a community. And as an umbrella organization, we're able to offer young people the funding, the mentorship, and most importantly, the support they need to keep at developing change in their communities. And this looks different for every student because I think it's really important that students combine their passion with the change they want to see. So at our organization, we have some students really interested in things such as STEM. And so they teach STEM workshops for students in underprivileged areas. We have some students really interested in working against sexual assault. And so we have students working in that area. We have students working for literacy and so many other areas as well, because as young people, it's our goal to find our gift and then give it away to impact society positively.
I couldn't have said it better. That was the last sentence was absolutely inspirational for me. But you have worked in different areas within your Georgia Youth Leaders. But you told us that when you started up this project, you actually met your co-directors through social media, which I thought was such a
Gen Z thing to do.
Yes, exactly. It was really a Gen Z thing to do. And I was just wanting to know, what would be your best advice for young people who want to make change? Is it to be on social media? Is it to find platforms online? Or is it, what is your best strategy for young people to get?
Definitely. So I'm a strong believer that the people you surround yourself with are a direct representation of who you do become. So I know they always say like, oh, the 10 people you spend the most time with end up impacting you in so many ways. And so finding, even if that community is online, finding people who want to do what you're doing is really important. And so for me, this was through always being very socially conscious and active on my Instagram account. And so you'll always see me posting stories or little videos of different projects I'm working on, and people will get involved with that. LinkedIn is also a great place for students to get involved as well, because LinkedIn has so many amazing opportunities on it. And so really what it is taking that first initiative. If you see someone doing something that you want to do, or you see someone doing something similar to you, just reach out, say, hi, this is who I am, this is what I do, I'd love to connect with you, and maybe get on a Zoom call so we can talk a little bit about our projects. And that's personally how I met my co-director. When we talked about, we both had our own student organizations, we talked about some of the issues we were facing, adults not really wanting to engage with us, or not being able to apply for funding opportunities because of legal status issues and stuff like that teen organizations often face. And so reaching out and not being afraid to take the initiative to just put yourself out there is the first step in making the connections you'll need to succeed.
But with the theme of this year being human rights, depending on where you live, would you say that there are added challenges for young people to get involved depending on perhaps where in the US they live? Could there be like other challenges?
So I'm assuming most of you are not aware of this, but anti-Asian hate has been something that's very prominent right now because of COVID-19. And there was actually a shooting not more than 10 or 15 minutes away from my house where they killed 4 Asian Americans in Ackworth, Georgia. And so issues like this have become very prominent, and gun rights have become more and more of an issue. And so young people have started this organization called March for Our Lives, where young people everywhere are marching peacefully to protest for guns and say, we want stricter regulations on guns so we can protect our people. And it's really taking that first initiative to say, how can we collectively create change? Because one person is never going to be able to change the world, but it's one person empowering another person to empower another person and creating communities of young people who can move towards society the way we want to see it. And so, really, there are specific barriers, and there are things such as, like, if you live in more of the South and you don't live in a big city, it's how do you make that network? How do you make the connections? How do you get officials involved? I met my sheriff, my county sheriff, which is like our policing department, a few weeks ago, and I was talking to him about the shootings. And it's talking to those officials and like understanding that there is this underlining racial bias within our systems here, and really identifying with, as young people, we have a specific outlook on life that not everyone's going to have because we have our own lived experiences, and it's sharing that with those who will listen is so, so important.
But you were speaking about like different barriers, and when I spoke to you earlier, you told me about how you young people have to apply for a legal status to become a nonprofit organization, and how the barriers are very, very high when it comes to administrative work. How do you as an organization help others?
Yes, so in the United States, if you want to be a nonprofit organization, you have to apply for this thing called a 501c3 status, which is a lot of paperwork and can be quite a hefty cost to start your nonprofit. Which anyone thinking is, oh, I want to do good in the world. Why do I have to pay for it, or why do they make it so hard? Well, I think that's just a little bit part of the system here. And so, as an organization, we applied for the status and we're able to be fiscal sponsors for other students who want to create change. And so, for all the young people listening, I think it's really important that you're not afraid to take that first step and that initiative to help others create change as well. Because if you're thinking about it, I bet 5 other people are thinking about it too. But it just takes one person to take that first step to really put the idea into action. And so when I was blessed with the gift of Georgia Youth Leaders, I found my co-director and we took it and ran with it. And we've been able to come so far with it. And so if you have an idea and it's something that you really think is prominent and could work, take it to a mentor. See, this is the idea I have. What guidance do you have for me to put it into action? And I mean, don't feel free to reach out to me, or I know any of the other people here would love to help you do that as well. And really take whatever idea you've been gifted to and say, how can I help other students get involved with what I want to get into? How can I inspire the next person? They say we're like candles. By lighting another one, you're not dimming your own light. Instead, we can shine brighter together. So don't be afraid to take that first step.
That is beautiful to hear. We actually have one last question for you that's from the Menti. And for those of you who have not used the Menti, there's information in the chat on how to use it. And the question is, why do you think it's important to involve young people?
Young people bring, like I said before, a group of experiences that others don't, and we have an outlook that others don't, and it's our future, right? These people in government, they will be gone pretty soon, and it's up to us to, one, understand the issues in our communities, be prominent, be activist, be involved, because sooner or later it's going to be handed on to us. And at Georgia Youth Leaders, we have a motto that's we are not only the future, but we are now. It's our job to take on the world now and not just wait till we're older, because the longer we wait, the less connected we will be. And if we really want to create change, it's important that we start today.
That's a really great answer. I loved how you said we're not just the future, we are now as well, because a lot of the answers coming in today are youth, are the young people are the future. So it's very, very good that you marked that we are just today as well. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and inspiring others to do the same. And I'm going to move on to our next panelist, Razian Ferey, or otherwise known by his artist name, Princeps. Razian, are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay, perfect. Yes, there you are. Well, my first question to you is pretty similar to the one I had in Asia. You have been working a lot with young people in the suburbs of Stockholm, mainly on the west side, and you have tried to help them find a poetic way to express themselves. But what made you actually become engaged in the first place? What made you get involved and say, I actually want to take action for this and want to change this cause?
I think it's a duty to help the youth, especially sometimes I feel when the climate changes so much and the environment in a country and it changes in a big way in a short time, then the older generation will have a hard time to explain how to solve some issues. If you look at the west side of Stockholm, the ones that were born in the 80s and the 90s, they will tell you that if some people had problems with each other, they would just fight it out by boxing or wrestling or something. But nowadays you have a lot tougher climate. People are shooting each other for $20. It's ridiculous. And then you can't come with the old solution. You need to have a new solution. And I think because I was in the middle of the two generations, that it was my duty to help the youth. So that was the reason why I started getting involved. And I like to influence people to do good things too.
But you have found a way to turn like creativity, specifically poetry, as a way to engage young people within your community. But I've also understood that there has been some sort of mentoring and you have gotten really close to the people that you have helped. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I mean, I think to become a mentor, you need to have a personal relationship. Because if you look at sports or anything, everyone that talks about a great coach would say, yeah, it was like a father figure for me, or she was like a mother to me. And you need to create that bond like a brother, like a sister, or a family member. Because I think the confidence that you have around the people that you are close to is the situation where you are as most confident as you can be. So I think the way I worked with the youth was to not only be a teacher, to also be a big brother for them, to help them with school. If they have any questions, they can DM me on Instagram or other social medias. Because I think to influence people, it's not only the 2 hours that you are working with them. It's a job that you have 24/7. You have a responsibility to answer, to help people. And you cannot just say, yes, I have a workshop Saturday and I will only help people Saturday. And the other days, I won't do anything. You need to be effective and consistent in your work. So I think that is also one of the things that made it a bit personal in the relations to the youth that I worked with. And also that we were a very small group too. So I think it's easier to create a bond when you are a small group.
But you have mentioned that the particular reason why you started to hold this workshop was to encourage young people to stay away from destructive environments such as criminality. And could you tell us a little bit more about the problems surrounding that, how you see it, and are there any solutions? Is poetry the solution?
I wouldn't say that poetry is the whole solution. It's a part of it. But I think if you look into the poetry or everything where you are creative, it comes from the heart and from the soul. And often you become very honest. And I think a lot of the conflicts in the gang environments and conflicts would be solved by people talking from their hearts and from their souls. I read a book yesterday about the gang violence. I'm terrible at starting reading books, but this one I read it in one day because it was so interesting for me. It was a young author here in Sweden who wrote about two of the gangs in my part of Stockholm that has killed the most lives in gang history in Sweden. And these two gangs were one gang from the beginning. And there were some of the guys made a robbery, and some people got jealous, and now the majority of them are in the same graveyard next to each other, and their parents are still good friends, but the youth, they were killing each other. And I think if they were honest from the beginning and told each other that, man, I appreciate you, it's a small thing, and just talk about it, then I don't think that we would have all these young guys here in Stockholm or in Sweden in the graveyards. So I think the solution is to talk and have a dialogue. And I think poetry is a part of dialogue also.
Definitely, absolutely. But do you feel that there are different areas or different neighborhoods in Sweden that have more challenges when it comes to creating peace? And what would be the solution other than poetry?
I think there are definitely areas where we need to put in more work. And I think the areas that have the hard time, it's society has neglected the society, that part of society, for a long time, and they have become a bit of like outsiders. They don't feel as welcome. And I think school is the most important tool, but I also think media needs to think about the narrative that they are giving out, because the narrative are that people in the suburbs in Stockholm are only killing each other. However, it's often a very peaceful environment. If you go into the city and if you talk to people there, they are very happy people. They want to help people. So I think media needs to lift up that narrative too.
But you have grown up in a country that has been known for and described as one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And why do you think it's important to talk about how Sweden can contribute to peace and just to talk about peace in general in Sweden?
I think it's a false notion that Sweden is so peaceful, because I think a lot of the issues, I think when people talk about it, they're based on a stereotype from the 80s, where Sweden was a lot more peaceful. I think Stockholm is the murder capital in whole Europe for gang violence. But I'm not so sure about it. I think I read it somewhere. And I think the problem is that there were once upon a time where they stopped using money and taxes to help the youth. They closed down schools, libraries, everything. And I think when that happened, a lot of the young men especially started selling drugs because they didn't have anything to do. And I think when that happens, when you start selling drugs, then it's about money and it's about territory and conflicts, and then it won't be as peaceful. But some part of Sweden are very, very peaceful. There are never shootings there, but that is the part that we don't need to work on. We need to work on the part that has the worst at the moment.
Yeah. We actually have a Menti question that I would like you to answer as well. Mm-hmm. How can you as an individual take action for peace?
That's a great question. I think if everyone chips in with something small, we will have a bigger product. So I think sometimes just smiling at a person is a way of showing peace. So if everyone is kind to each other and reflects about how kind am I at work, at school, we can become a lot more peaceful. Or talk to the kids. Don't bully people in school. Don't make fun of people. If you give people this lesson early, I don't think people will hurt. I mean, often people that have a good environment and parents that tells them to smile, to be happy, to don't oppress people, don't bully people, they will become often very peaceful people. So I think everyone needs to work with what they have, with the inner core of the family, and then as a society, I think we'll get a good product.
That's a great answer. And I saw some answers in the Menti as well. Try to walk in someone else's shoes, try to understand other people, education, as you brought up as well. So thank you so much, Lassian, for sharing. And thank you for inspiring others. And we are actually going to move on to our last panelist, Karina Ontinovase from Kenya. Karina, are you with me?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to have you here because you have so many different experiences within the young civil society, and I'm really excited to discuss the questions regarding youth involvement with you. But before we get started with that, I have a pretty specific question to you, because you have spoken about how you have grown up and lived in areas with conflict and how you have to live through the consequences of the genocide that happened in Rwanda. And what would you say growing up as a Rwandan woman in Kenya has particularly shaped your experience with the work that you do in peace building?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. Nobody's ever asked me that. So I think as a Rwandan woman growing up in Kenya, first of all, the aspect of diversity became real too quick. I came from a country that had two social classes, ethnic tribes, three, to a country that has over 42. I also came in a space where there had never really been that much tribal conflict, ethnic conflict until the post-election violence in 2007. So there was undertones of mistrust and undertones of the division that is within the people. And you could even see it among kids when they talk, who they play with, who they interact with. And that really took me back. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to grow in a society that would still magnify the differences that we have instead of, magnifying the strengths that we have as a people, regardless of where your tribe or your nation or your religion or your gender. So I quickly had to learn how to live with people from different backgrounds, also considering that when my folks came, we were refugees. So also learn how to exist and live in a nation that is not yours and still find purpose and, to live. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It absolutely does. But I'm more insecure of, because your work, I'm sure, has inspired so many people, but what inspired you? Was it this finding of how to make a purpose of you being a Rwandan woman in Kenya, or was it something else that kept you going and kept you inspired to work for peace building?
I think that for me is tomorrow, and still is tomorrow. The fact that what kind of society do I want to live in tomorrow? One instance I remember when I started working fresh off uni, I volunteered in one of the informal schools in one of the second largest settlements in Kenya called Mathare. And in one of the classes, I think it was a class where we have about 10 to 11-year-olds. So they started fighting when I was teaching, and when I asked them why they were fighting, they told me that, my mom had said I can't sit with or play with this with her because her tribe is this. So that really broke my heart. At the age of 10, at the age of 11, children are already conceptualizing narratives that are dividing them, negative narratives that are not even going to help them grow up to build an inclusive society. So that really broke my heart. So I started wondering then, how can tomorrow be better? How can this 10, 11-year-old not have to go through genocide, not have to grow up in a society that looks at their tribe instead of who they are as a person and what they're offering as a person? So that really broke my heart. And I started asking myself then, so for tomorrow, then what do we need? Where do we stop this cycle of discrimination? Where do we stop this cycle of injustice and of impunity? And the kids for me were an eye-opener because they're young. I remember I shared this with you yesterday, a saying in Swahili that says, samaki mkunje angali mbichi. That means you can only bend a fish when it's still, I don't know how to say mbichi, like fresh, like when it's before you cook it or before you do anything to it. So I figured why not start having value-based mentorship with children and youth, and show them how to embrace diversity as a strength and how to build an inclusive society by leading different processes of transformation in their communities. Yeah.
But how do you work with these children and young people to increase their attitudes towards peace?
So we have, I'll give an example of one program that one of our longest running programs is called Kiota. So Kiota is Swahili for nests, like the way birds build a nest for the babies, and then the babies have to stay in the nest before they learn how to fly. So this is like a space whereby for 2 years, we are repeating the same lessons to the same number of kids consistently. We're talking to them about who a leader is, what values they should look for in society, what values are there for social transformation, what is peace building, what is conflict, how can I, at the age of 10, at the age of 11, at the age of 12, start building, start contributing towards the peace that I want to see in my community. We talk to them about the vices that are undermining peace and development. We talk to them about corruption. We talk to them about tribalism, and help them understand that the fact that you're different from somebody else, literally we ask them, so the different tribes, I'll give an example. The different tribes in Kenya are Kikuyu, Luo, Luya. So I asked them, does Kikuyu, when they get injured, do they have red blood or blue blood? Does Maasai have yellow blood or red blood? So at the end of it all, we come to the understanding that we are all human beings, we are all Kenyans, we are all Africans, and if we have to prosper, then it does not have to be at the disadvantage of the other, but we can walk together and build the society that we want to see, instead of tearing each other apart for, selfish gain. So I'm really hopeful, and I want to say this here, I'm really hopeful that the next generation of Kenyans is going to be different, because we've taken time to walk with them. Like Rashan said, it's not just a one session thing, but continuously mentoring and offering mentorship platforms that can enlighten and open up their minds. It's all about their mindset for us, because at the end of the day, they'll leave the program, they have to make decisions of their own, they'll go and vote. Will they vote for somebody because they're from their tribe, because they're going to get ABCD, or will they vote for the country and for their agendas and for the ideas that they want to see being put in front?
But what since we're all hoping for this next generation of Kenyans to truly improve the peace building, but what would be your best advice for young people who want to make a change?
Don't wait. If you're passionate about something, if you're literally sitting down and there's something that's bugging you, that's bugging your mind, you just keep thinking about this one thing that really makes you angry, it just bugs you and you want to fix it, then fix it. I love what Deshan said, because we have a lot of potential that has not been tapped into, a lot of potential that has been ignored because of our age, because of our lack of experience, and that really holds back the transformation and the development that our nations need. So don't wait for somebody to pull a chair for you, don't wait for somebody to open the door for you, don't wait for somebody to like literally make your own way. I believe that leadership is about making ways for people to make something extraordinary happen. So make that way, make that change, even if it's just a post, even if it's just a tweet, even if it's just a small video on IG, just start and don't wait, because tomorrow is only going to be better, I believe, if young people act responsibly and accountable today.
Thank you so much. We have one last question for you that's in the Menti, that's also for the audience to answer. And I would like you to answer this question: who or what inspires you to take action?
Oh my God, who or what inspires me to take action?
You have an answer saying the panelists, so you're obviously doing a great job. No pressure of giving us another good answer. You can just
So I think what inspires me is the fact that I know that inherently we're good. Yeah, nobody is born bad or evil. We just live in a world that is imperfect and has a lot of imperfections, and most of those things really undermine our action, undermine who we are. So I think I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful, and that helps me wake up every morning. The kids that we work with, they dream big. I cannot not be part of their dream. I cannot not be part of their journey. So yeah, I would say that who or what it says, yeah. And my faith, yeah.
Okay. We have a lot of great answers in the Menti as well. We have everything from Greta Thunberg to the panelists. So a lot of great answers. And I'm going to move on to questions to the panel again. We have opened up the chat. So if anyone here has a question for the panelists, feel free to write them in the chat. We have one first question that is going to, let's see here. Dacian. Someone is wondering about the book. What was the name of the book that you read on Monday?
The book it is in Swedish. It's called Tills alla dör, which means until everyone dies. It's a loose translation. And the name from the book is a Swedish rapper who was interrogated by the police. He's a part of the conflict. And when they asked him, how do you think this conflict will be solved? And he answered, when everyone dies. So it means that basically there is no solution. Everyone needs to die for the conflict to not exist anymore.
Okay. We have our next question to Desha. And you spoke about mentorship and mentoring other young people to be active in this civil society. And the question we have for you is, what advice do you have in terms of being a good mentor to someone?
Definitely. So I think mentorship is definitely a skill you develop after leading and understanding people. But the biggest thing is being an empathetic leader. And when you are mentoring someone, never make them feel alone and make them feel understood, and take time to not only learn what they're trying to achieve and where they're trying to go, but them as a person, because we each have our own unique things that make us special and that we care about. And when someone's able to connect on those things with them, that brings us a lot closer, right? And so let's say I'm helping someone develop an outreach fundraiser for a project. Yes, the goal is the outreach fundraiser, but I want to make sure that they know that they can do it and that they're cared about. Because sometimes the biggest part of mentorship is supporting the individual, because they already have the potential, but as a mentor, it's your job to bring it out of them. So leading with empathy and really understanding the people you're working with.
Thank you. And Karina, a similar question about being a mentor and a similar question about helping others. You spoke about mistrust and division, and even amongst children. And how can we in societies in different ways try to change that? Is it by being mentors, or what is your best advice?
Definitely by being mentors, because even the kids that I talk to will tell you that they don't have somebody they're looking up to. We ask them, one of the sessions we do is a session on leadership and governance, and we ask them, who's your role model? One time the kids told me, they mentioned our former governor, Nairobi governor. And guys, this guy is super corrupt, funds gangs, funds young people doing drugs. So I was like, okay, we need better role models for the next generation, for the young people. So yes, we can start there, being better role model, actually walking our talk. I love what Rasha and Dishan are doing, because young people are going to look up to them and say, well, she's done it and he's done it, so I can do it. So we need to show them that they can actually be positive change agents of society. That's one. And two, I think the stories we tell and how we tell this, how we tell our stories also matters. Rasha mentioned the issue of media. Media is also a very big issue here. Bad news sells faster than good news, but bad news is not going to build your capacity to do anything positive in this world. So I think that there's need for media and how they look at young people. We need to start having an asset-based view of young people and not see them as a problem, but see them as solution providers, and they will live in that reality that you create for them. So the media, so we need to tell better stories in our music. Let's use music, let's use videos, let's use animation to actually portray characters that they can be role models to the children. That's what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Let's use young people as a resource. And we actually have a question from Jenny to all of the panelists, and anyone can answer it. And it's, what would you like us adults to do or not do to support you?
Can I jump in really quickly?
Of course.
So definitely working with adults is always intimidating for young people when they're really starting their journey in change. And so being open and not making us feel underestimated is definitely the biggest thing. But then also being a guide and being someone we can feel like we can go to is really important, because a lot of times the reason students that want to step up don't step up is one, they're scared of what others will think, or two, they feel underestimated. And so being supportive and just saying, you can do anything you want to do and you're not going to do it alone and I'll help you get there, has really been the driving factor for so many people, so many young people I know, to really take that next step that they need to establish their projects.
Rasian, do you have any advice for adults not to do while trying to support?
I think sometimes to get too involved is a problem, because if I come with an idea, of course I want the feedback, but don't try to change the core of it. And if you want to change the core of it, give constructive feedback, or maybe give me a way out, and maybe tell me or tell the youth to, nah, the world don't work, it doesn't work like that or something, explain it. But don't kill dreams, I would say. I think that is probably the biggest issue, as the issue was also a bit into that. Don't kill the dreams, be supportive that, yes, you can accomplish this if you put in the work. So I think that is one of the most important things to do.
Karina, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think they said it well. Don't kill their dreams. Don't speak at them. Just, trust them, let them fail. Failure is part of the process, and just walk with them in their journey. Honestly, walk with them in their journey.
We have another question from Sophia to anyone and to everyone in the panel, I assume. How can I, as a 21-year-old in Stockholm, help make change? Where do I start? I'm going to pass it to Karina.
Wow. 21-year-old. So I think you need first to understand what change it is that you want to make. I remember when I started out, one of the feedback I got is that I was like a headless chicken, just running around everywhere, doing everything for everybody. So I think understand what change it is that you want to make, and then increase your capacity in terms of both knowledge and skills. Because one of the things about the world that we live in, they respect somebody who knows their stuff. So if you want to address issues on gun violence, if you want to address even an environmental issue, equip yourself with more knowledge and skills on how to actually do that, and then just get there. Start with one small thing. One small step will eventually lead to your bigger goal, your bigger vision that you have. And I would advise you to also have your vision clear early on, so that you're not deterred and pulled in different directions. Once you know what your vision is, one step at a time, I'm sure you'll be able to work towards it. And also consistency is key, guys. Consistency is key, especially for young people. Consistency.
Deja, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit onto what she already said. Really take what you're passionate about and find a way to use that to develop change, because at the end of the day, if you don't have anything, what you do have is what you're passionate about. And so whether that be, I know a lot of people love the environment and that's like what they feel called to and what they feel passionate about. For some people, that's teaching. For some people, that's something else. But whatever it may be, if you can find something that means something to you, that will be the driving force for you to wake up every morning. That will be your fuel to keep going. Because if you don't have your passion, or like I like to call it, if you don't have your why, if you don't know why you're doing it, then you won't want to keep doing it.
Yeah. And Austin, you're a 20-year-old living in Stockholm. What's your advice for this 21-year-old?
I was going to say what Disha and also Karen was talking about, to have an understanding of your cause and what you want to do. I think in Sweden, we are very blessed. We have a lot of organizations and a lot of tools to use. It's very easy to start projects here. I think Sweden perhaps is the country where starting projects are the most easiest, I would say, from my experience. You only need to make a phone call sometimes, and then things fall on place. You don't need to do like Disha, the NGO formula and everything in depth sometimes. But what I would say, two things: that you choose a cause and you start to do it, but sometimes don't get too ahead of yourself. Don't take too many challenges on yourself directly. Sometimes you need to take a step back and focus on one cause, and then you can move on other causes. But in Sweden, to help make a change, I think just reach out to people and see what you can do for the community.
Thank you, everyone. We have another question, and this is a question that I'm really excited to hear your answer from. It's from Matilda, and she's asking, what has been the most challenging for you to do? What has been most challenging for your work during COVID? Have you seen more or less engagement in your community to help out? Daisha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So COVID has brought a unique challenge, and I think Zoom burnout is a very real thing. So thank you everyone who did join. I think reaching out to people, one of the things I do is teach young people how to identify injustices in their community, and getting people to want to listen to that in an online setting can be quite deteriorating. And so we weren't able to visit the schools we wanted to talk to the young people we wanted to in the same way. But I will say there was this new spark and this new light. I think because students had a little more time on their hands, there was more students who reached out and said, how do I start a project? How do I get involved in this? How do I do X, Y, and Z? And I honestly think more students are doing great things for their community because of COVID, because they had that extra time to really sit in all the things that have happened, within our country. There have been so many things, just Black Lives Matter and like anti-Asian hate for COVID and so many things like that have really opened the eyes for young people right now. And they're really taking that step to move society in the way they want to see it. So whether or not COVID was challenging or not, definitely challenging, but I think it was a necessary challenge to prove to young people that they really can do anything they put their mind to.
Gracian, how do you feel about the COVID situation here in Sweden? Has it improved engagement, or has it made it harder to commit?
I think for my industry, it has affected it very badly, because I used to do events also, not only workshops, where I gathered a bunch of poets and artists and let them have like an open mic session with an audience. So because of the restrictions, those parts are very hard. And I felt that I didn't do anything during 2020 project-wise. I think I started the year very good. And then when COVID came, I started to be at home very, very often. And I'm a very lazy person. It takes me time sometimes to get things done. And being home, it's a challenge for me, because I will be in my lazy nature, if you can call it that. So I don't get so much done. So I hope after the vaccine and stuff that I will be out there making a change again.
How has it been in Kenya?
It's been a bit different for us. I think one of the most challenging things to work during COVID was just seeing the pain and the struggle in the community that I work in, especially because I work in an informal or slum community. So things went from -1 to -50 in like overnight, with the curfew and the restrictions, and the forceful enforcement of those restrictions by the police in the community. We've literally lost quite a number of young people all throughout last year, even this year, just because of these issues. So that was really hard, just seeing families go hungry, literally losing people because they didn't have a meal or two to eat. So that was really, really hard. Have I seen more or less engagement in my community? I think for young people, I would say more. I would say more, because with the curfew and the restrictions, there are very few people that came in to support. So this created a vacuum that young people that I've worked with and that I've mentored took advantage of. So we ended up just being the ones to mobilize for resources, taking the food on a door-to-door basis, and we're still hoping to do that. I'm just looking for more support to do that. So I think I've seen a more opportunity for young people to rise and prove themselves. We've been saying that we're leaders of today, and COVID in Kenya has given us the opportunity to show that we're actually leaders of now and today. And I'm happy that young people have actually lived up to that. And if it wasn't for the young people, then our community would be at a very worse position than they are today.
Thank you. And even though you guys have answered this during the session, I want to ask this question again, because I think it's so important and I want to hear your answers again. And as someone that has worked a lot in the young civil society and worked with young people that are very marginalized, it's sometimes really, really difficult to explain to adults why we are important, why we should get more space, why we should be invited to the table and to be able to negotiate with them. And I wanted to ask you guys, why is it important to involve young people? Racian.
I think there are different aspects. I think the youth often comes with a fresh perspective and also a new way of looking at things. But I also think the youth are using social media a lot more. I mean, in the 80s and 70s, you didn't have friends from other countries if you didn't travel there. Nowadays, you can have contact with someone that you never met just by social media. But I think sometimes it's the worth that the youth brings. If you never have the youth at the table, you don't know what they bring. But bring in some youth, give them an opportunity, and I promise you will see the worth. So I think some people need to. I have a friend who once said, I think it's an Arabic proverb. It says that the king is not selected by age, it's by intelligence. And what he meant by that, he said, it was a man once that started to argue with him. He was driving very fast and he almost ran us over. And my friend stopped the car and started talking to him. And then the man said, "Oh, I'm older than you." And he told him, it's about intelligence. You can't just come with the that I'm the older argument. And I think you need to lose that and start think that the youth are bringing a new perspective and that we need that.
Disha, Rajan spoke about social media and you told us how you met your partners through social media and Instagram. What do you think about this question? Why do young people need to be involved?
I think innovation is the biggest thing we bring to the table, through using social media, but also we really know how to use the internet and we use that to our advantage in learning new things and learning what other people are doing and connecting with other peers around the world. And, sometimes I like to say, if you don't give us a seat at the table, that's okay. But eventually we're going to come in and rebuild the table. So an example I use is the education system, right? It has stayed the same for so many years in America. And the thing is, they don't care what we really have to say. And that's what it feels like oftentimes, they have a student advisory board where they're like, oh, young people can, but we know our ideas aren't being taken seriously. And so what I just keep telling everyone is, if you don't give us a seat at the table, one day we're going to come and rebuild that table because we see the issues because we're living in it. And so we are ready and we are equipped to come change that.
Thank you so much. I'm from Sweden, so we have IKEA here, so I will rebuild a lot of tables, believe me. Karina, what do you think about this? What is the gain of involving young people?
I agree with everything that Disha and Rasiana said. And I think for me, literally thinking about Africa, there's a research by Mo Ibrahim that says that the average age of leaders in Africa is 65, and we're literally a teenage continent. So that in itself is a disconnect, because what is being put out is not for the majority of the population in that continent or of any society. So that's one reason why young people should be involved, because they're the lifeline and energy of any society. They're the survival of any society and any community. And if they're not at the table, then who are you building for, if not for the young people? They need to have a voice and agency. We need to increase their agency in that as well. Young people are also creative. Young people are resilient. That's one of the reasons why I love working with young people. Like literally, we'll be beat down by so many different challenges, but we'll stand up. We'll dust ourselves up and stand up and keep going until we hit our goal. So I really love that about young people, and that's why they should be involved.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the questions. Thank you to the panelists. It has been so interesting hearing different stories from the US, from Sweden, from Africa, from Kenya. And I genuinely want to thank you for sharing your experiences and inspiring others. And I hope that the participants here have been inspired, because I can say that I have. And yes, thank you, Razian, as well. And I want to just finish off by saying that this has been so interesting to listen to you. And I wonder, how can people get in contact with you guys if they want to ask you more questions? Razian?
Well, I have my Instagram, where I would say that you can reach me. You can also email me. I can write down the email in the chat, and also the Instagram.
Yes.
I will also put my Instagram and email in the chat for anyone who wants to reach out. And if anyone has any ideas that they need help kicking off the ground, please let me know, because I'd love to help.
Yeah. And Karina?
Yeah, I'm also putting my Facebook, IG, and Twitter details on the chat and email. You can DM me anytime.
Thank you so much. And for all the people here, this is truly a resource for you to use. You have young people here with experience. You have young people here who have inspired. So feel free to reach out to them. And thank you guys so much for participating today. It has been truly inspiring to listen to you. And thank you to the audience as well.